She laughed at my linen pants in front of the whole room. But 30 seconds later, the lawyer said I owned everything. House, stocks, legacy, all of it. Hi, I'm Alandra. I showed up to the will reading dressed in what they called beneath the family standard. Turns out I didn't need pearls to walk out as the sole heir. They needed proof to explain why they lost. Have you ever been underestimated so badly that your silence became your sharpest weapon? Tell me, what would you do if the people who mocked you ended up beneath your name on the title deed? Let me take you back to that day, where humiliation turned into revelation. And the girl in linen? She got the last word. If that's what you wore to the will reading, no wonder they left you nothing. That was the first thing my sister said to me, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, and just soft enough for it to sting deeper. Her voice curled like smoke in the air of the sunlit conference room, where people sipped champagne as if this were a gala, not the final reading of our grandfather's will. I had worn a navy blouse, linen slacks, and sensible flats. Not designer, not silk, just appropriate. But in this room full of pastel lace, pearls, and polished grins, I might as well have shown up in a janitor's uniform. Cressida floated toward me in a cream-sheath dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on the marble floor. "Oh, sweetie," she cooed, fake concern tightening her tone. "I almost didn't recognize you. Is that linen?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. It had been a week since I received the vague and signed email from Silas Renner's office about a family estate matter. No salutation. No subject line. Just a polite request for my presence on the 19th at 2 p.m. I had called the office to confirm, got silence. I asked Mom. She said she wasn't sure what it was about. Dad changed the subject, asking if my car was due for maintenance. I should have known. I should have known when the RSVP form listed only Ron, Geraldine, and Cressida Maynard on the guest registry. That's when I packed the linen pants. Guests milled about with flutes of rose, the hum of small talk masking the real reason they were here, to watch Cressida receive the crown everyone assumed she had earned. "It's not about the money," Cressida declared moments later, raising her glass to an eager circle of attendees near the drink table. "It's about legacy. And I'm proud to carry that forward." Applause. Someone even clinked their glass against a vase. I stood at the edge of the room, silent, forgotten. My fingers brushed the silver pin in my pocket, a small trinket my grandfather gave me when I graduated law school. A reminder, he'd said, that you don't need to shout to be sharp. I hadn't worn it in years. Today, I brought it like a compass. Then Silas Renner cleared his throat. The air shifted. "Thank you all for coming," he said, standing at the head of the long oak table, where place cards glinted under warm light. I noticed one in cursive gold that read Cressida Maynard, beneficiary. Typical. As per the instructions of the late Mr. Harold Maynard, Silas continued, this reading will follow a strict legal sequence. Some guests straightened in their seats. A young woman in the back, someone I didn't know, lifted her phone and began recording. Another guest, older, leaned into her partner and whispered, "She finally gets it all." I pretended not to hear. Silas opened a folder. The seal on the front shimmered gold in the overhead lights. Per the instructions notarized and filed with the estate on August 12th of last year, he began, the entirety of the Maynard property, residential and commercial holdings, accounts, and inherited shares, are to be transferred to Ms. Alandra Maynard. Glass hit tile. The sharp crash of a dropped champagne flute cut through the air like a scream. Cressida blinked, then gave a little laugh, sharp and bright and faltering. "That must be a mistake," Daddy said. Silas didn't flinch. "Your father no longer held legal authority over the Maynard Trust after Harold Maynard restructured it 2 years ago. This document, he held it up, revokes any interim alterations and reinstates the original clause. Eyes whipped toward me. My mother's lips parted slightly, then pressed into a thin, pale line. Her manicured hands clutched the stem of her glass. My father stared down at the table as if it had something more important to say than his daughter ever could. Cressida stood frozen. Her chin lifted slightly, defiance or disbelief. I couldn't tell. "You can't be serious," she said, voice cracking. I walked forward. Slowly. Deliberately. My heels tapped against the tile like punctuation. I let the moment linger. I passed the buffet, the velvet chairs, the brass sconces. I stood beside Cressida, close enough for the cameras to catch us both in frame. "Funny," I said, voice calm, steady cutting. "I was told I wouldn't even be invited." No one spoke. The only sound was the humming of the AC and the soft whir of someone's phone recording. On the wall behind the table hung a brass plaque with a carved inscription, "In Legacy We Rise." And just under it, etched into glass, was a temporary installation, honoring Cressida Maynard, future of the estate. I noticed the words weren't etched deep, just vinyl letters stuck on. And just like that, they started to peel. The girl in the back turned her camera toward Cressida's face. I didn't look. I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd see. Pride cracking, certainty unraveling, fury restrained only by the presence of a crowd. A TikTok notification popped on the girl's screen. Live, when the side character becomes the heiress. Behind me, I heard her voice, now hushed and guttural. "This isn't over." I stopped at the door. "No," I said, glancing back with the smallest smile. "It's just beginning." Outside, I paused on the steps and pulled the silver pin from my pocket. I brushed a thumb over the curved H engraved at the base, Harold Maynard's legacy. My legacy. I pinned it on for the first time in years. Down below, guests murmured. Some still stared out the windows. I saw someone point. Another guest clutched a drink with Cressida's name etched into the glass stem. Let them look. I wasn't dressed for a coronation, but I had just been crowned. They tried to bury me in paperwork. Too bad I know how to dig. The old county administration building stood like a forgotten courthouse, its pale bricks stained by decades of Texas heat. I walked through its chipped glass doors that morning not out of nostalgia, but to find proof that my family thought I wouldn't come looking. Last year, Mom had asked me to sign a few temporary holding papers for the family property. "Your father's not well enough to deal with it right now," she'd said, handing me a neatly clipped packet with yellow sticky notes and highlighted spaces. I didn't read it. I didn't ask. I just signed. That's what good daughters did, until they realized they were being erased. Now I was back, in a sharply pressed blazer, hair tied back like armor. My boots clicked with every step across the sterile linoleum. I carried a tote full of documents, scanned, backed up, notarized, and a resolve I didn't have a year ago. "Good morning," I said at the records desk. The clerk didn't look up. "Request forms on the right. Fill it and wait for your number." I filled it out, marking every box with calm precision: property history, deed transfers, notary credentials. When my number was called, I walked to the counter and slipped the form under the plexiglass. "I'm requesting the full deed history of the Maynard estate, including the Cedar Ridge property and the warehouse lot on Commerce Avenue." The clerk raised a brow. "Those records were sealed after the current ownership was verified. You'll need power of attorney or beneficiary status to override." I reached into my folder and pulled out a certified copy of my grandfather's trust, stamped and sealed. "I have both." She hesitated. The shift was small but real. "I'll need a few minutes." While she typed, I adjusted the collar of my blouse. It was a reflex, left over from years of working under senior attorneys who expected every button to mean something. Today, it meant I was at war. The documents slid across the glass. I sat down and began flipping. The first 3 pages were routine standard transfers, internal memos. Then came a series of quiet transactions dated 9 months back. Property titles moved from Ronald Maynard to Cressida Maynard. One by one. Warehouse, family home, lakeside cottage. Each stamped. Each notarized. Each missing one thing, my name. But the notary's name caught my eye. Monica Varell. I knew that name like a splinter under skin. Cressida's roommate from law school. The one who dropped out after a cheating scandal and rebranded herself as a mobile notary. My chest tightened. I flipped to the date of the warehouse transfer. April 14th. I froze. That was the week Dad was hospitalized with a mild stroke. I had driven him there myself. I sat in that cold ER room, feeding him ice chips and watching the morphine fog his speech. He hadn't even held a pen. I circled the date and scribbled a note. Impossible. I was there. I dug through my phone, found the photo. Dad in a hospital bed, time-stamped April 14th, 2:06 p.m. He couldn't sign anything that week. I held his damn 4-line. I scanned the notary stamp again. A mobile visit, confirmed by Monica Varell's business signature. Forgery. It wasn't even subtle. Have you ever found out that the people you trusted most were quietly rewriting your future without you? That the ones who smiled at dinner were signing you away behind closed doors? If you've ever been blindsided by the people who should have protected you, leave a comment number 7 below. Now, let's see what I did next to reclaim what was mine. I packed the file into my tote and walked outside, breath tight in my lungs. I found a bench and dialed Silas. I believe we're looking at fraud, I said, without greeting. I'll confirm with my legal counsel. That evening, back at my apartment, I received a text from an unknown number. Back off. You don't want to make enemies out of family. I stared at the message. No name, just a threat wrapped in faux concern. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Norelle with the caption, "They're nervous." Good. The next morning, I drove to McKinney. Norelle's office hadn't changed in years. Sunlight through sheer curtains, an old brass lamp, shelves lined with case law and potted succulents. She stood when I entered, sharp-eyed as ever. "I need your expertise," I said, placing the documents on her desk. She reviewed them silently, page by page. When she reached the notary logs, her expression didn't shift, but her voice dropped an octave. "This isn't negligence," she said, tapping the page. "This is calculated theft." She handed me back the folder. I didn't sit. "I want the transfers frozen." Norelle nodded. "We'll file an emergency motion to the registrar. 60-day minimum hold. 90 if we push." Push. That afternoon, I sent the formal freeze request to Silas, including a notarized affidavit, copy of the deed anomalies, and a forensic handwriting report I'd commissioned overnight. With it, I included one line. "I'm not asking for the truth anymore. I'm proving it." Within the hour, I received an email from Cressida, CCNG Silas. "Whatever she found, it won't hold. We'll destroy her before this gets to court." I didn't blink. I didn't scream. I simply clicked forward, attached the email to Norelle, and typed 3 words. "Let's make that public." You invited me to smile, eat, and sign my own erasure? Not today. The Stone Cafe looked exactly like the trap it pretended not to be. Sun-drenched tables, linen napkins, jazz humming through ceiling speakers. A brunch haven for soft diplomacy and hard lies. As I stepped through the glass door, the scent of maple and overripe apologies drifted through the air. I hadn't been to brunch with them in years. But the memory still flashed. Me at 9, clutching a half-eaten waffle. Cressida had snatched the last piece from my plate, and when I protested, Dad said, "Come on, Alandra. One waffle won't kill you. Be a team player." Mom laughed, and Cressida grinned like she'd just won a medal. That's what it always was, me handing things over so they could smile and call it peace. Not today. I spotted them in the back corner booth. Cressida was already standing, arms extended like a talk show host mid-segment. "Oh, Eve," she cooed, air-kissing my cheek. "Glad you came. Peace matters, doesn't it?" I didn't answer. I sat. Smoothly. Deliberately. I unfolded the napkin onto my lap, like setting a chessboard. Mom leaned forward, tucking a lock of her hair behind one ear. "We ordered early for you, citrus scones, like when you were little." Ron gave me the same distant nod I used to get after every A-plus report card. Cressida smiled wide, eyes calculating. "We just want to make things right." Fake warmth radiated across the table. Small talk. Mimosas. Dad asked if I was still doing that remote consulting thing. Mom passed me a tiny butter knife. The server refilled water. Then Cressida placed a crisp manila envelope between our coffee cups. "Just something small," she said. A suggested division. You know, to help the family settle quickly. For peace. There it was. The manipulation wrapped in a bow. I set down my fork with surgical care. Looked her in the eye. "Did you bring a pen?" I asked. "Or would you prefer blood?" The jazz paused for a second. A glitch in the speaker system. Or maybe the air itself flinched. I reached into my tote bag. Removed a sleek black folder. Clicked it open. One by one, I slid the documents across the table. Certified copy of Grandpa's will. Title transfer history. Notarized letters from Plano Memorial confirming Dad had been unconscious the week he'd supposedly signed away our legacy. A signature analysis. Forensic. Indisputable. "What you call generosity," I said calmly, "the law calls fraud." Cressida's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did," I replied. Mom's fingers curled around her teacup like it might save her from drowning. "My child, it's just a misunderstanding." I pulled one final sheet from the folder. "And here's the affidavit from the attending neurologist." Signed. Dated. Dad couldn't hold a spoon, let alone a pen. A man at the next table looked up. A woman nudged her friend and tilted her phone to record. The jazz music faded, no melody now, just silence pierced by the soft clink of a spoon on porcelain. Ron's voice cracked. "We shouldn't do this in public." I turned to him slowly. "Then maybe you shouldn't have tried to erase me in private." Cressida grabbed the envelope again, slid it toward me with a shaky hand. I saw the handwritten line in her neat script. "Just be reasonable." I took my pen and crossed it out. Thick, black ink. The camera from the next table zoomed in. Someone whispered, "Wait, isn't it the girl from the old video?" I stood. "Next time you invite me to brunch," I said, folding the napkin precisely, "don't include a trap in the menu." Cressida hissed, "Ungrateful little." I turned back, voice razor sharp. "Gratitude requires honesty. You're bankrupt in both." Dad looked down. Mom's lip trembled. Cressida's face flushed the color of betrayal. As I passed the table beside us, the woman who'd been filming whispered, "Good for you." At the door, the jazz returned, muted, off-tempo. A waiter handed me my coat and said softly, "Ma'am, I saw everything. You've got guts." Outside, the sun was harsh and bright. I pull my phone from my pocket. A new message lit up the screen. From an encrypted number. "Got your tip. You ready to go public?" Attached was a draft article header from the blogger who'd messaged me weeks ago. Bloodlines and bankruptcies. The Maynard family's battle over legacy. I replied with a clean scan of the original will and a single caption. Let's burn the lies. Yuri wrote the story, but I kept the clause. The boardroom at Silas Renner's office looked sterile enough to perform surgery in. White walls, metallic chairs, a glass table that reflected every twitch, every glance. But I wasn't here to be dissected. I came to make a clean cut. As I walked in, Cressida was already seated on the left side of the room, her polished pen, gold nib, engraved with her name, balanced like a dagger between her fingers. Mom, in muted mauve, offered a rehearsed smile. Dad sat like a statue, arms crossed. His eyes never met mine. At my side was Norel, steel and heels, holding the black case we both knew could unravel every game they had tried to play. Silas cleared his throat. We're convening today to evaluate recent property transfers and ensure they comply with the original Maynard Foundation Trust document. Cressida jumped in first. I've submitted all agreements, signed copies, family consents, and documents supporting the redirection of assets. Everything was above board. She slid the folder across the table with the poise of someone who had done this dance too many times. I said nothing. Instead, I opened the black case and withdrew a sealed envelope, a flash drive, and one thin strip of folded yellow paper. That note had been buried in an old tin box behind Grandpa's tool bench. I remembered him folding it, years ago in the garage, his voice low but certain. Always fold your safeguards in silence. Let them underestimate you. That's where your strength sits. That's where Clause 17 was born. I nodded to Silas. Please play the video. The lights dimmed. The screen on the far wall flickered to life. There he was, my grandfather, seated in his favorite chair, sunlight behind him. His eyes, old but sharp, looked straight into the camera. If anything goes wrong, if she is betrayed, activate Clause 17. Only Alandra knows where it is. The moment snapped like a mousetrap. A pen dropped from someone's hand. Cressida's jaw tightened. Mom's breath caught. Even Silas leaned back slightly. I pulled the document from my folder and placed it gently in front of him. Original will. Notarized.
Archived.
Highlighted in blue. Clause 17. Norel stood. Her voice cut the air like cold wire. Clause 17 reads, any transaction involving Maynard Foundation assets occurring before Alandra Maynard's 35th birthday requires her explicit written approval. In the absence of such, said transactions are to be provisionally nullified for 180 days pending investigation. Silas flipped through the folder Cressida had proudly submitted. After a pause, he looked up. There is no such approval on record. Mom's lips parted. Harold never meant for that clause to be real. It was a gesture. Silas shook his head. It was notarized.
Filed.
It is real. Cressida rose sharply. The legs of her chair scraped across the floor like a scream. This is entrapment. You can't build a clause in secret and weaponize it years later. I met her eyes.
No.
This is insurance. The kind I learned to keep quiet. Norel didn't blink. She handed a printed motion across the table. Have you ever been written off, only to rise back stronger with proof in hand? That quiet moment when you're calm becomes their undoing? If you've ever fought back with silence and strategy, leave a comment number 9 below. Let's keep going because the game just flipped. We are filing for an injunction to freeze all Maynard-related assets, including foundation accounts and real estate, pending a full forensic audit. Effective immediately. The bank representative at the far end of the table murmured to his assistant, then nodded towards Silas. We accept the freeze. Cressida's hands trembled. She reached for her gold-engraved pen, pressed it to the table, and it snapped clean in two. She cursed under her breath. You don't deserve any of this. I lifted the strip of folded yellow paper and laid it gently on top of her broken pen. And yet, I'm holding all of it. Mom started to cry, quiet, hiccuped sobs. Dad rubbed his temple, like the pain might vanish with pressure. Silas leaned back, then finally spoke. Based on the validity of Clause 17 and the accompanying evidence, we will suspend all active transactions for 180 days. Callista Grace Foundation accounts will be subject to independent audit beginning Monday. I reached into my pocket and touched the old silver pin clipped to the lining of my jacket. Grandpa had given it to me the same day he explained the clause. You're the one with wings. Remember that. The video on screen ended with one last quote, Grandpa's voice gentle now. If you trust blindly, you'll walk into shadows smiling. The room went silent. Then a knock at the door. A receptionist cracked it open. There's a reporter here from the Dallas Chronicle. Silas looked to me. Should I send them away? I stood.
No.
As I walked into the hallway, heels tapping on polished tile, I saw the camera already rolling. Ms. Maynard, the journalist, called. Is it true you've just frozen $4.8 million in fraudulent family transfers? I didn't pause. I don't confirm rumors, I said. I confirm documents. Then I shut the door behind me. You called it a legacy. I call it a lie wrapped in flowers. The Grandview Conference Hall was flooded with soft lighting, gold-accented floral arrangements, and the hum of optimism only fake legacies can afford. Cressida stood on stage like a high priestess of philanthropy, arms spread as if blessing the flock below. She looked radiant in white satin. Too radiant. Too rehearsed. This fund, she announced, voice amplified and slow, stands on years of personal dedication, family trust, and hard-earned credibility. Thunderous applause. Projectors lit up the stage with the words, Built on Grace, the Women Rise Fund. And that's when I walked in. The doors didn't slam, they sighed open. My heels tapped against the hardwood in deliberate rhythm. Every step silenced a little more of the room. Heads turned. A few reporters immediately recognized me. Cameras shifted. I didn't wear power colors, just a charcoal suit and the same silver pin my grandfather once called quiet armor. I held a black folder under one arm and a tablet in the other, already connected to the building's AV system. Cressida blinked. Her voice faltered for half a beat. The MC, a young woman in a cobalt blazer, stepped forward, flustered. Excuse me, this is a restricted. Since we're talking about trust, I said calmly, let's open a few records, shall we? Before the MC could block me, the screen behind Cressida flickered. My tablet had taken over the feed. I clicked once. Slide 1. Bank statement. Maynard account number 7735. $48,000 transfer. March 2018. Memo. Emergency Operations Foundation.
Click. Slide 2.
Email from Geraldine Maynard to Alandra. Just send the funds to Cressida's account. It's better PR that way.
Click.
Slide 3. Industrial property tax, paid by E. Maynard, 2020. There was no need for drama. Just clarity. You called it yours, I said to the room. I funded it, staffed it, branded it, then got erased. The MC froze mid-breath. Cressida shifted her weight, clenching the sides of the podium. Her face tightened, but her eyes darted, looking for an exit.
Click.
Slide 4. A photo from 6 years ago. Me in a hard hat, paint-stained gloves, standing next to the warehouse's first donated supply truck. Banner in the back. Maynard Women's Initiative, Alandra, M. The live stream's comment feed, visible in the projection's corner, exploded. Hashtag Grace Fraud. Hashtag She Funded Everything. Hashtag Maynardgate. Ms. Maynard, a reporter finally asked, rising with notebook in hand, "Are you officially accusing the foundation of misappropriation?" I looked straight into the closest camera lens.
No.
I'm confirming it. The effect was immediate. Reporters started shouting. Phones lifted for live streams. Flashes popped like popcorn. Cressida panicked. "This is slander," she cried, stepping off the podium and storming toward the edge. Her mic cord snagged, yanked her briefly backward, almost comically. She ripped it off. I will not be ambushed by jealousy. Before she could escape fully, another screen activated. Slide 5. A drone camera feed, live. It hovered outside the glass facade, capturing the room from above. The camera zoomed in just in time to catch Cressida in retreat, her reflection caught in the towering window as if the glass itself was recording her collapse. On screen, the banner behind her glitched. The original line, "Built on Grace," flickered. "Built on lies." A stunned pause followed. Then applause.
Real.
Unapologetic. A few people stood. The MC had no words. Just a twitching hand holding useless cue cards. I didn't bask in it. I simply turned to leave. But before I could, a voice from the back, a journalist, called out, "Ms. Maynard, why now?" I turned back slightly, no smile, just precision. Because I was silent when they erased my name. Never again. I walked out. Later that evening, social media boiled. Hashtags hashtag Maynardgate and hashtag GraceFraud trended in over 4 regions. Multiple sponsors released statements calling for an investigation. Cressida's public accounts vanished. My phone buzzed. A message from Norelle. That was bold. And final. She won't rise from this. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Instead, I returned home, slipped off my blazer, and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was my grandfather's old notebook. Between the pages, a phrase he once scribbled on a post-it and left on my nightstand. Truth never rushes. It walks in at the perfect moment. I heard the phone ring. Didn't need caller ID. I answered. Geraldine's voice cracked through the speaker. "You've destroyed your own blood." I stared at the old trinkets on my shelf, my childhood trophy, the business license I'd once helped renew for them, the photo of the warehouse's opening day. "No," I said.
You did.
I just turned on the lights.
Click.
Silence, this time not awkward. Just complete. She laughed at what I wore. Now I decide who walks through the front door. The courtroom wasn't grand. Just beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and a ticking clock that seemed louder than anything said. But to me, it felt like the center of the universe shifting. Judge Holloway's voice cut through the quiet. The estate in full, including all disputed and previously transferred properties, reverts to the original heir, Ms. Elandra Maynard. A breath held by the room was released. No gasps. No screams. Just silence that hit harder than any slap. Geraldine clutched a silk handkerchief and let out a strangled sob. It wasn't grief. It was realization. Ron sat next to her, unmoving, but his knuckles whitened against the wooden bench. He didn't raise his head once. Just stared at the floor like it might offer an escape hatch. And Cressida? She didn't even show up. Word was she sold her car 2 days ago, deactivated her social media, and boarded a flight to anywhere but here. The courtroom had a chair reserved for her. It stayed empty. When the gavel dropped, I didn't blink. I stood, nodded politely to the judge, and walked out with the quiet confidence of someone who had waited her entire life for this moment, and earned it twice over. Later that afternoon, I pulled into the driveway of the house that had once shut me out. The gate was open. Ivy still curled around the porch railings like memory refusing to die. The air smelled like early fall, crisp, gold-tinged, full of endings pretending to be beginnings. By the door, a new plaque gleamed. The Maynard legacy reclaimed. I stepped inside slowly. The scent of cedar hit me, followed by something older, pipe tobacco and lemon cleaner. Home. The floorboards creaked beneath my steps, not in protest, but in recognition. The hallway still held the oversized family portrait. I walked to it, heart steady. The edited version was still framed, 3 smiles, 1 missing. I removed it from the wall, flipped it over, and found what I suspected. The real photo still tucked inside. I slipped it out and ran my fingers over the edges. There I was, centered, laughing, my arm around Grandpa's shoulder. No digital erasure, no strategic cropping. I reframed the real photo and hung it back up. The sound of the nail clicking into place echoed softly. Final. Satisfying. Upstairs, I opened the door to Grandpa's study. Everything was just as he'd left it. The lamp, the dusty globe, the bookshelves filled with journals and gardening manuals. On the far right shelf, I placed the silver hairpin, the same one he gave me when I was 16. "You wear this," he'd said, "and the world won't forget you, even if they try." In the desk drawer beneath envelopes and aging receipts was the envelope he left me. His handwriting, delicate and unwavering, spelled my name. "If they ever forget who you are, just come home. This house will remember." I folded the letter and slid it into the back of his leather-bound notebook. Then I closed the drawer and turned off the desk lamp with a quiet click. For the first time in years, I felt seen by someone, even if it was just his memory. The hallway tablet buzzed. A video call. I answered it. Norel's face appeared on screen, all sharp lines and silent pride. "You know what they'll say now?" she asked. I smiled. "Let them say it. I'm not listening through their walls anymore." She laughed gently. "Welcome to full ownership of the house and your damn story." The call ended. I walked downstairs and opened the front door. The neighborhood looked the same. Children ran down the sidewalk, chasing each other's laughter. Across the street, a little girl let go of a paper bird and watched it spin upward, riding the wind. I leaned against the doorframe and exhaled. Inside, I lit the stove, pulled out the cast iron pan I had bought years ago, but never used in this house. I set the table, just one place. One fork, one knife. No performance. No audience. I grabbed an old notebook from the drawer, flipped to the first page, and wrote, "Day 1. I belong here." In the corner of the living room, I placed a ceramic pot on the windowsill.
Mint.
Grandpa always said it was the easiest thing to grow and the hardest to kill. I figured it was the perfect plant to start again. In the kitchen basket sat a letter. The New Maynard Foundation Gala Invitation. Unopened. I left it that way. Some things didn't deserve my attention anymore. Outside, the sun cast its last light over the porch. The breeze was gentle, peaceful. No fanfare. No camera flashes. No applause. Just a house that now carried my name without resistance. And a silence that no longer felt like exclusion, but victory. Not revenge. Not even restoration. This was reclamation. I didn't just win back the estate. I won back myself. I'm no longer standing in the shadows of a family that tried to erase me. I now walk through the front door of the legacy they tried to steal, with my head high, my name intact, and my peace unshaken. The lesson is clear. When you stay silent, they write you out. But when you rise, with truth, dignity, and proof, they can't ignore you. Justice doesn't knock. It walks in when you're ready to open the door. Have you ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most and had to fight for your voice, your worth, or your place in the world? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you've ever wanted to reclaim your power after being pushed aside, stay with us. More real stories are coming about truth, betrayal, and the courage to return home stronger.